This is ContraZoom,
where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
And I'm Rachel Ho.
On today's show, we are continuing our A24 retrospective. This is our 9th edition of the series. You can listen to episodes 180, Enemy, 178, Red Rocket, or go way back to 108, A History of A24 Films to get the full backstory on the company. We're actually jumping ahead 5 movies in our queue to talk about the 2014 film Life After Beth, directed by Jeff Baena. The film tells the story of Zach Orfman, a young man who is devastated that his girlfriend Beth Slocum died after going on a hike alone and being bitten by a poisonous snake. As he continues to grieve and spend time with Beth's parents, something weird happens. Beth shows up again. Understandably, Zach is freaked out, but realizes there's nothing like thinking you lost someone you love and getting the ability to have them in your life again. Unfortunately, Beth is a zombie and slowly decomposing, which may or may not put a hindrance on their relationship. Before we go deeper into the film, I want to welcome back returning guests Jeff Baena and Pierre Frigon, the hosts of the podcast Classic Movies Live, the pre-recorded show where they talk about movies. They were last heard on episode 147, Judas and the Mank. Welcome back, Jeff and Pierre. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having us. And before I say anything else, I mostly know your A24 retrospective from recorded episodes. I didn't realize you recorded that whole thing live. That's awesome. The whole intro, I thought that was all pre-recorded.
Yep, we Rachel and I take turns writing these scripts where they take a little bit longer than I would like to, but I'm glad that you enjoy them.
I also like A24. I just want to put that out there.
well, good. Then you're on the right show today, Pierre.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I was worried for a sec.
Now, this isn't any regular guest appearance, but it's actually a part of a super crossover episode. This week, you can hear Rachel and I on your show, and now you guys are here as well. It's all a part of your master plan, which since October, you guys have been going through Anna Kendrick's filmography. You had invited us on to talk about her 2 Christmas movies, Happy Christmas and Noel, and I guess the best way to describe this crossover is that it's Anna Kendrick's horror comedy movies. We talk about the voices on your show, and now we're doing Life After Beth, an A24 film that has a supporting performance from Miss Kendrick. Do you want to kind of talk a bit about how this idea sort of came to be and how this crossover episode works for you?
Yeah, it's I don't want to go too behind the scenes here, but I may end up doing that. So a long time ago, we had, well, not really that long ago, but during the opening of the current global situation, we had a podcast devoted to Leonardo Dicaprio, and we just went through I think Leonardo DiCaprio is really interesting because you can kind of divide his entire career into 3 or 4 distinct stages. And so we went through not his full filmography, but sort of like a cross section, including representative movies from his full filmography. And we wanted to do that thing again because that was a big hit and we really enjoyed it. So that one was, Leonardo DiCaprio is one of Pierre's favorite actors. So sorry for speaking over you, Pierre.
Yes.
But yeah, so Pierre picked Leonardo DiCaprio for our first one. Well, I wanted to go and pick the next actor that we would go through their full filmography. So I picked Anna Kendrick because I'm a big Anna Kendrick fan. I don't know if anyone has known that, but just if it wasn't clear already. But the thing with Anna Kendrick is that a lot of her films have been very supporting roles. So going through her filmography, we kind of had to shake up the format a bit so that we actually have something to talk about, because as much as I love her in her first episode or her first movie, Camp, she's only in it for about 10 minutes. So how do we do an hour-long podcast on a movie where she's only in the movie for 10 minutes? So we started sort of working through that. And as we've gone forward, we've gone through like her early period, and we're sort of getting into parts where she's a lot more a lot less of a supporting character and a lot closer to a lead. But this movie, Life After Beth, and the voices that we did on our show is this is sort of an interesting era of Anna Kendrick where directors and casting agents tried to sort of cast her as a scream queen in horror movies. And these aren't actually the best examples of this, but they are still kind of in that area. And it's kind of interesting to explore, an actress who casting agents really can't seem to get a handle on until very late into her career, and sort of what she ends up being a part of until she really finds her footing. And this movie that we're about to talk about is definitely part of that, I think.
I think you raise a really good point there, and it's one we're going to keep this episode kind of like our traditional A24 retrospectives, but towards the end, I do want to kind of like hone in a bit on the Kickin It With Kendrick style that you do to really talk about Anna Kendrick specifically, because I think if it wasn't for you two coming on, we probably wouldn't even mention Anna Kendrick at all, because frankly, her part in this movie is so small. You mentioned her first movie, Camp. She's maybe on screen for 10 minutes. She probably has half the time in this movie, which is kind of like crazy. So in our usual A24 retrospectives, we wouldn't even acknowledge a performance that small. But because of you guys being here, we'll make sure that we kind of loop all that in together, so that way we can fill the requirements for your project as well, too.
Well, I appreciate it.
Now, before we kind of get into this episode, I do want to kick it off with our tradition of our A24 4 questions. When you had us on your show, you kind of nicked this idea and asked us, but kind of tailored them to Anna Kendrick style. But now we're going to do the traditional A24 4 questions. So number 1, what are your top 3 A24 films? Jeff, we'll start with you.
So I had a lot of trouble with this. I think I initially narrowed it down to about 7, and then I tried to narrow it down to 3 that, admittedly, if you asked me tomorrow, these may or may not still be my top 3, but I tried to keep it like 3 interesting ones, and to the best of my ability, ones that haven't been mentioned on this podcast before. I say that, and my first one is The Lighthouse, which I think has been mentioned by just about every guest of yours. So, it's easily The Lighthouse is my number 1 from A24. I think it's just such a surreal film, and it's probably the only movie I've seen that's like a real example of Lovecraftian horror, even though it's not actually based on anything that Lovecraft did. It's so interesting, and like, it's really cool to watch. We did an episode on it a long time ago, and like, the one thing that stood out to me is just how much the seagulls were in it. Just everything about that movie, all the details, everything. I'm really interested to see what Robert Eggers does next. The Northman, I guess, based off of The Lighthouse. But you've had guests talk about The Lighthouse before. So my number 2 is The Death of Dick Long, which is a really, really cool story. It's based on a real life story that I've always been very fond of because it's very funny in a really dark way. And I think it's The Death of Dick Long, without spoiling anything. It's a really cool look at sort of small town policing, and it plays out as this almost as a procedural, but kind of as this mystery where you know what happened, but you don't know how it happened. And the only reason that the mystery sort of proliferates as long as it does is because every single person in the movie is incompetent, which somehow or another actually makes the twist near the end come across even more powerfully and, like, honestly even more hilariously, because it's basically a comedy. And then my number 3 is Uncut Gems, which is my favorite Adam Sandler performance and one of the most stressful films I think I've ever watched. I remember I typically have in the past written a series of articles for the school newspaper at UBC Okanagan, going over what I think should win the Oscars in any given year. And with Uncut Gems, I had written a very passionate piece about why Adam Sandler should win the Best Actor Oscar, and then he wasn't nominated. So I had to retract that. Well, that piece hadn't gone out yet, but I had to rewrite that to be about someone else, but then inject even more passion into my Adam Sandler part of it, because I was very, very upset that he hadn't been nominated for an Academy Award that year.
Well, I think that's a great top three. What about you, Pierre?
I'd say my first is also The Lighthouse. I feel like me and Jeff really had a good experience watching that movie, I guess. But yeah, I think like the performances from Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson were amazing. I think the style, I love the absurdist yet dark style of it that I can't remember the director's name, but that he goes for. I also saw his other movie, The Witch, which I really liked, but it was like way too dark for me. I thought this was like a good balance of like absurdist humor, but also like kind of terrifying. So I really like that movie. My second's probably Ex Machina, just because I'd say I'm in computer science, so I thought like the talking about AI was really cool, even though it's like way different in the movie than in, like when I actually study. But then also just like I never really saw Oscar Isaac as like an amazing performer until then, and I thought the movie was just like really haunting, and it kind of leaves you with like a really like doubtful look at not just like I obviously it's a movie, but it does make you think about the future, I guess, and also just like about like what is love, like the song, I guess. I feel really weird saying that. But yeah, like, and makes you question that. So that I thought that was really good. And then my third is probably gonna be The Green Knight. That movie was really, really like I don't know, I didn't love it the first time, but there's just something about it that just feels very beautiful to me. And mesmerizing. Like there's a few scenes there that like I'll always remember. And I'm not really entirely sure how they made me feel, but like they're definitely like imprinted in my brain. And it's like one of those movies you have to see in theaters, I think, to really appreciate it. So yeah.
Great choices, both of you. I'm really happy with them. Now, the second question is, what was your introduction to A24? Jeff?
So this is a hard question for me to answer because I think you've mentioned this on the podcast before. A lot of times people's quote unquote introduction to A24 is just realizing that a lot of movies they already like happened to be under the same banner. And I think that's pretty much what happened for me. I looked through all of the list of A24 movies, and I'm dead certain that the very first A24 film I ever watched was Tusk, because I was a big Kevin Smith fan, and I remember I didn't see that one in theaters, but when the opportunity arose for me to see it, the first thing I did was buy the Blu-ray, and I saw it pretty much as soon as was possible. So there is very close to zero chance that I had seen an A24 movie before I saw Tusk. So that was probably my first ever A24 film I ever watched. Beyond that, I probably started to really become conscious of them as a company, either with the movie Eighth Grade or Hereditary. And then I really drew the connection to this is a company I need to start actually watching and looking out for their releases with Midsommar, which is obviously the second movie from Ari Aster under them after Hereditary, and was very, very, very difficult to keep out of my top three. But I would say that Midsommar is probably where I became explicitly conscious of A24, but I clearly had seen things before.
Yeah, I understand that, and that is something that I feel like a lot of people end up saying. What about you, Pierre?
I think it was actually The Disaster Artist, which is really weird to me because it doesn't feel like a lot of the A24 movies I've seen like in recent years. But yeah, I guess I watched it because I read the book and I was a big fan of the Room. So I think seeing James Franco's performance was really interesting, but I don't think I was made aware of like A24 until watching. I think it was either, it might have been First Cow actually, when we reviewed First Cow, but I was like, oh, like this, they do have like a certain type of style. I don't know why it would be First Cow, because it's not necessarily a movie I found necessarily good or memorable, but I just remember thinking this is like this makes sense now. It was either that or maybe Midsummer too. But yeah.
All right. And then number 3, what director, dead or alive, would make a good A24 film? Jeff?
So this one was shockingly easy to me. Sam Raimi. 100% Sam Raimi would be the perfect person for an A24 film. And I think that the reason I would say that is Sam Raimi has definitely showed himself as someone who can play along well with big studios. He did Oz the Great and Powerful. He did 3 Spider-Man movies. He's currently doing a Doctor Strange. He's clearly a bigger director. He's not one that I don't know if any director could necessarily say they need A24, but Sam Raimi definitely doesn't. He's well known enough in the industry. That said, I think that Sam Raimi's best work has always been independent or closer to independent. Like even the old Spider-Man movies, which to me are some of my favorite movies I've ever seen. Those are big studio movies, but Sam Raimi definitely has a lot of creative control in how those work out. But putting those aside, I think his best movies are things like The Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell, which really are much closer to being independent movies with a lot of creative control. And you're about to hear me talk a little bit more about this, but I personally believe that A24 is really good about giving directors control to do, like directors with very distinct styles are able to have a lot of creative control over their movies under A24. And I think that Sam Raimi would really flourish under that. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. Sam Raimi, easily.
That's a great pick.
It's a really good pick.
That one. Yeah. Pierre, what about you?
I don't know if this is a good pick, but I'd love to see Christopher Nolan make an A24 movie.
No joke here. As Jeff was talking, I thought, oh, it'd be cool if Chris Nolan did one too.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
I was gonna pick a smaller like director, but after he said Sam Raimi, it just made me think, because I feel like Nolan is kind of getting too big for his bridges. Is that the saying? Too big for his something like that. So I feel like, because I love I love Memento and I love The Prestige when he does smaller stuff too. So I'd be really interested to see him like really strip back like his movie making process and just make something really small but ambitious. Because especially after Tenet, I'd love to see him just like retract back to like his early days. I think it'd be really cool to see.
You're not wrong in the slightest. Like, I think that's been something that Rachel and I have talked about several times on the show, where we're just like, hey, Nolan, we love you. Can you just kind of bring it back to basics just a little bit? Like, great ideas. Just like you don't need $500 million with no sound editor. You need someone to say, no, you can't afford this.
I feel like Inception was like his sweet spot. Like, I feel like that was quite big, yes, but it still felt really intimate. And when Jeff was talking about, having such a big director like Sam Raimi, I was like, you could definitely say that about Nolan too. So no, definitely good pick, both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And then the last question, what makes an A24 film? Jeff?
So this kind of builds on my last response as well. I think that A24 is really good about having creator-focused films. For example, like when I watched Swiss Army Man, if someone else, I have a friend who's a really big fan of the movie Swiss Army Man, and by extension, a really big fan of Daniels, the directors who did that. I feel like after watching that movie, I have a pretty good idea of what to expect from Daniels, and it makes me excited about their next movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is another A24 movie. Similarly, with Uncut Gems, when I saw Uncut Gems, I had a pretty good idea of what I expected from the brothers whose names I'm forgetting at this moment. But they also directed the movie Good Time, another A24 movie, which was very similar in tone to Uncut Gems, despite being a very different movie. So I feel like they're very good at encouraging directors who have a specific style to really indulge in that specific style without, I would say, without like being completely hands off. I think me and Pierre have talked about it a lot on our show. With Netflix, for example, Netflix gives people almost too much creative control. Like what I said about Swiss Army Man and Uncut Gems would not apply to something like Mank. When I watch Mank, I don't get the impression that this is David Fincher's style. When I watch Da 5 Bloods, yes, it's a Spike Lee movie, but like I don't get the impression that this is anything like his other movies, really. It's like, I think A24 is really good about letting directors do what they want, but also keeping them, like, reining them in enough that they don't go so overboard that there's too much of the director in that movie, in a way.
That's a good one. Pierre, what about you?
I feel like from what I've seen, a lot of them just kind of feel very like empty, if that makes sense. Other than like Uncut Gems, actually, and like they feel like kind of outliers, but I don't know. Like I think that's why like First Cow felt like a little too A24, if that makes sense. I think that's why it like stuck out to me. And that like I feel like they'll do something that's different. They'll do something that's like I feel like the pacing's like usually kind of slow. And they feel very empty. Like that might just be like a side effect of the like low budget filmmaking process, but it gives you an uncomfortable amount of time to think while watching the movie, if that makes sense. And it's uncomfortable, but like it's enough that like it keeps drawing me in. Yeah, and that's why I think that like what really sticks out to me.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one too. I love hearing everyone's different responses to that question because it's so open-ended.
Did anyone leave a message for me today? The Slocums?
Nope, not today.
I think they're avoiding me.
That's no way! Okay.
Where is she?
Listen.
She is not dead. I went to her grave. There's a hole in the ground.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
She's resurrected.
She's resurrected.
She's resurrected.
Okay, and that's better. Why? Why is that better?
It's from the Old Testament.
Why is all my stuff in boxes now?
Hey.
Beth, you're so beautiful. I'm so happy you're back. You don't want to eat me, do you?
Not right now.
No, I mean like really eat me.
Not with my parents around.
Okay. It's not fun. It's weird. End of kiss, guys.
What's going on?
But let's get into this movie. Life After Beth was directed by Jeff Baena in his directorial debut. Before that, he was best known as co-writing the David O. Russell film I Heart Huckabees. The movie stars Dane De Haan as Zach, the boyfriend who can't decide if he's happy that Beth is back or deeply mortified that Beth's parents may have unleashed something far bigger than they expected as more and more dead people start showing back up again. Aubrey Plaza plays Beth, right at the tail end of her run of the hit sitcom Parks and Recreation, as the resurrected girl who can't understand why her parents won't let her out of the house during the day. Comedy legends John C. Reilly and Molly Shannon play the Slocums, who are just happy to have their little girl back. In what was pretty coincidental time, as Sundance Festival is just wrapping up right now, A24 acquired the film during this 2014 edition of the festival, which included a deal with DirecTV to allow the cable company a 30-day window for people to rent from their service before a theatrical release. The film had a limited theatrical release beginning August 15th, 2014. This is going to be a spoiler-filled episode, so if you've not watched the film, we suggest doing that first. I think the first thing I want to discuss is the film's genre choices. It is a romance film that is backed by horror and comedy. Did any of the three genres I mentioned work for you, or was it kind of all of a jumbled mess? Jeff, let's start with you.
That's an interesting question. I think it was a bit jumbled, but I actually did. I'm not 100% sure, but I may be the person out of the four of us who liked this movie the most. I I thought that the romance parts really worked in my opinion, because I thought this movie sort of, it's Dane De Haan's character coming to terms with the fact that he lost his girlfriend in very slow motion. And I think that for what it's worth and the way that that plays out, I think it does really work, actually. The comedy was pretty funny. I actually did laugh a lot in this movie. The horror was basically non-existent. I feel like this was basically a horror film in name only, but that's not that bad of a thing because I don't care that much about horror, so I wasn't too disturbed by that. But yeah, I think that like this movie was a little jumbled. On the whole, I don't think it was very good, but I actually did enjoy it a lot.
Interesting. Rachel, what about you?
I think I put it in the same peg as like Shaun of the Dead or something. It's kind of like a zombie comedy satire. I'm not saying it's anywhere near as good as Shaun of the Dead, mind you. It's just that it reminds me of those kinds of movies where it's action zombie stuff, but to me, it's meant to be comedy. I agree with Jeff. I don't think it's a horror movie in the slightest. I don't know. Is that actually what it's supposed to be? Like it's listed as horror? Is that what?
Well, I don't know. You're using zombies and, people dying and things like that. By nature, it is horror.
I see.
It has elements of horror, but yeah, I would say horror of the three genres it's the least of the three.
Yeah, and like I think when I didn't know anything about the movie before going in it. I mean, even with Aubrey Plaza being the main person, it's like when you see John C. Reilly and you see Molly Shannon, in my head it instantly just went, okay, it's like a comedy. Like I just kind of assumed that that's where it was going. And I think as a comedy, like I laughed a few times. Like there were some funny bits and when I did laugh, it was like a genuine laugh, not like that's funny. Overall, yeah, I think Jeff, you're probably right. You probably like the movie the most out of the four of us. It's fine. Like I didn't hate it or anything like that, but yeah, not really my thing. But I mean, yeah, comedy, zombie movie, that's always a good, like a Zombieland kind of good, fun movie to watch.
Now, Pierre, I'm curious about you now. Where do you sort of fall on the does it work or not work spectrum?
I don't even know, man. Like, it was just like, it was fascinating to watch, like, just trying to process what the creative team was thinking when they wrote this movie. Like, I can't tell if they're like geniuses for keeping me so invested despite not understanding what was going on the whole time, or like were they released, like was it just like, was it bad, or was it so like did they do it in, because I was like, it was paced terribly and like nothing made sense plot wise, like from what I could tell, at least like it made sense mostly until like halfway through, and then I got really, really confused. But I was still like engaged the whole time, and it like really confused me because I felt like I shouldn't be, but I was. So yeah, I don't really know what to say. Like I don't necessarily think I would hire this like director / writer like for another movie, because like I don't think they could pull it off like the same way, but like it's kind of like lightning in a bottle in a weird way. And yeah, well, maybe not even lightning, just like, I don't know, a lamer version of lightning. I don't know.
I think it's one of those movies.
Bug in a bottle.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's one of these movies though that it's like you're not really meant to look at logic. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's supposed to be. There are definitely a lot of plot holes in it, but I think that it's one of those, you just ignore it and you sit back and watch it. Like it's like the epitome of a popcorn movie. That's the way I took it anyways. Like it's not meant to be serious. It's not meant to be, and I mean, maybe that's taking away from the movie. Maybe that's being really disrespectful to it. But to me, it was just that. It was just like kind of a fun ride of a film. Dakota, what do you think of it though?
Yeah, I really didn't care for it. And I think the biggest issue is, while I laughed a bunch of times, I laughed more times at this movie than I did at The Voices, which is also, another horror comedy. But we'll get to that. You'll have to listen to Classic Movie Lives to hear our discussion on that. But yeah, I laughed quite a few times. But my biggest problem with this movie is the comedy superseded literally everything. It basically felt to me like it was one long sketch. I am almost confident that this entire movie was improvised. I didn't read about if it was or not, but considering the talent that was involved and the way it played out, I basically sort of looked at each scene as, okay, they have an objective of this is what the characters' needs are, this is what they need to accomplish by the end of it, and go. And it sort of felt like too often they were riffing, they were trying to, hit multiple punchlines, they would repeat the same joke in different ways over and over again. And all of it was kind of to the detriment of actually advancing the plot because, as you have now just said, both of you have said, there are a lot of plot holes in this, especially in the second half of this film, because, it's great, it's easy to do a setup. It's easy to, great, here's a zombie, here's a love story, here's someone dead, now they're back, what do you do, sort of thing. That's a really interesting setup. The problem is, how do you narratively connect it all, and then how do you have a plausible either explanation or resolution? And frankly, I think that they really missed the mark on both ends. So while it starts out as a very interesting comedy experiment, it ultimately fails as a narrative feature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Do you think that, I didn't actually think about the improv thing. Like maybe it was improv.
It felt so much like every scene with John C. Reilly and Molly Shannon. Like if I was a director and I cast those two, I would be an idiot not to let them riff on material. But and same with Aubrey Plaza. I've seen the outtakes of Parks and Rec. I know how funny she is. Dane De Haan was the only one that sort of seemed to be trying to ground the movie at all. And I know it's funny reading the Letterboxd reviews of how much everyone hates this guy, but he was probably my favorite part.
They
he's
hate
the only
him?
one that was actually making logical choices.
Yeah, he was without him, the movie really wouldn't genuinely wouldn't work. I think without him, because
it would have been a bad Funny or Die sketch.
Yeah, you really needed him.
I don't know why, but I feel like Dane De Haan just attracts not liking. If that makes not liking him, it's really confusing because I think he was really good at if you've seen Chronicle, he was amazing at making me not like him. And it's the same thing in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
He's got a bit of a punchable face, and I hate saying that about people, but he kind of does, doesn't he? It's just he has that face, and I think if he's being in the role of a bad guy or a creep, not necessarily a bad guy, but just kind of a creepy. I'm thinking Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler, he is a bad guy in Nightcrawler. But you know what I mean? Just kind of a creepy protagonist. I think that's where he works best. But in this, I didn't mind him. Of all of the things that if I want to pick at, it's not him. He's not the one that I have the most objections to in this movie.
No, I actually think he really anchors this movie because, as I said, the part that worked best for me in this movie was the romance and the slow motion dissolution of his basically worldview. As he's trying to deal with the death of his girlfriend, and that happens basically at the same time as him getting a second chance. And I thought he was really good at that, and more importantly, all of those beats of that story would not have hit if Dane De Haan hadn't nailed it in that role. If you'd gotten anyone, I don't even know exactly what it was. I can't say less likable. It's more just less able to do that role. I don't think it would have worked because Aubrey Plaza is fine, but she's very passive in this movie. And Dane De Haan is really the one who has to drive that plot forward.
He seemed like he was the only one that was really actually following the script to me because, like you were saying, Aubrey Plaza, her basically whole character is you're restarting from zero. You can't advance the scene because you have to bring everyone back to the level that you're at. And so that was what her motivations were. And then with the parents, both of them was, let's ignore everything. We can't acknowledge everything. The elephant in the room is not actually here. We can't tell anyone about what's actually happening. And Dane De Haan was the only one that was actually really going through the steps of, he basically was doing, the 7 stages of grieving, but I wouldn't call it grieving really. It was the 7 stages of accepting that your girlfriend is a zombie. I don't know how else to word it, but he does a really good job of being like, okay, I'm going to be skeptical. Okay, you know what? Maybe I'll try accepting. Okay, I'm fully on board with this. Okay, now I'm a little suspicious. Now I'm very suspicious. Now I need to find a solution. And now I found a solution. Mm-hmm. Like he clearly has a clear character arc going through all of those different emotions. And you can see from scene to scene what he's trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
I also really liked the older brother in this.
He was hilarious.
I really liked him. Like when I was saying, like there are a few things that I laughed at. It was him. That was the actor's name, Matthew Gray Gubler.
Which he's the lead in Criminal Minds, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's not. Because I looked him up after and I didn't realize it was the same guy, but he was really, really great in it. Like I like that he kind of just pops in and out, and like he's very funny in it.
Also, if I can just shout him out, he's in another movie by Jeff Baena, which I absolutely wouldn't recommend, actually. Horse Girl. It's an awful movie. But in that movie, he plays this random dude who comes to a party and all he wants to do is show off his mixtape and show off his rapping skills. And it is the most hilarious character of any movie in 2020. Personally, I think.
We all know a guy like that, don't we?
We absolutely all do.
All right, so then if the horror aspect didn't really work and we sort of seem a little mixed on whether the comedy added or detracted from the movie, the romance seemed to be the one thing that maybe all three of us can kind of agree on actually sort of worked for this.
It was definitely like the most interesting part of the movie. I think like despite like the corniness of it actually was more funny when they were trying to be funny, if that makes sense. So it would have been cool if they maybe leaned into that more and like tried to, I don't know. Well, I guess they leaned into it because that was the whole point of the movie, I guess. But like lean into the corniness more, maybe. Like it would have been cool if like maybe he took her on more dates or something. Because I thought the hike was hilarious. Like that whole dynamic of like her with the washing machine on her back or whatever, like, and then like trying to enjoy the day despite, you know, how ridiculous the whole thing was. I thought that was really funny.
I guess I want to know, we're going to get into real spoiler territory here, how the three of you sort of reconciled the ending of this movie. And I don't mean, I don't mean that Zach killing his girlfriend. I mean, we get this idea that the reason that she came back to life is because Beth's parents got their Haitian house worker to perform a voodoo spell to bring her back to life. Except for the fact that, while that sounds very interesting and a little racist, that they basically just try to blame it on a black person. And
the only black person in the movie,
the only black person, yes. When Zach goes to confront this Haitian house worker, it's revealed that she ran away and she had nothing to do with this. And in fact, it's quite offensive that you're even suggesting that because they're Haitian, they had anything to do with this. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. They sort of played on our own stereotypes to reverse it. Except for we're not really given any sort of explanation afterwards of what happened. And then when Beth dies, when Zach eventually kills her, when she's gone full zombie, I guess she is like the alpha zombie, and if it's like you kill the head of the vampires, all the vampires die, and all the other zombies seem to miraculously die. So like, I'm just so confused about what really happened. I wonder if the three of you have any interpretation about what actually happened to this movie, or am I on the right page and they just, you know, skipped a few scenes?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't actually realize that she was like the head zombie, that once she goes, maybe I just clocked out at that point in the movie. But I didn't even realize that was the thing. Yeah, I was confused as to like why everything had happened in the first place. And I do think it was slightly cheap that, forget saying it's the only black person, the only non-white characters in the movie were meant to be the cause of all of this nonsense. So yeah, it was very... I don't know how to reconcile the ending either, to be honest. Like I kind of took the whole movie, and again, it's probably disrespecting the movie, but I just took the whole movie as don't think about it too much. He shoots her, she's dead. Okay, we're done. Like, you can go home now and you're done with the movie. I guess I just didn't even think about it that hard, because clearly the whole alpha zombie thing just flew right over my head.
I think that, like, maybe this is not okay to say, but I think that the movie works a lot better if you disregard a lot of that. Like, first off, like Rachel, I didn't realize at the end that she was the alpha zombie. Like, that, I must have also been clocked out at that point. But beyond that, I really liked that that there was no simple explanation with the only non-white person in the movie happened to be the cause of everything. I liked that wasn't a simple explanation, and that was the one character who thought that might have been a simple explanation got pretty, like, heavily told no by her brother. I liked that. But to me, this movie works a lot better if all of this is happening kind of tangentially to some actual zombie outbreak that just isn't explained. And so that's how I kind of chose to watch this movie, is when he's going around and there are other zombies in the town, I just kind of imagined these were unrelated incidents, and that whatever was happening was affecting them, but also affecting Beth, and that it just sort of kind of wasn't important. Like, if you're watching a zombie movie, normally what you're expecting is you want to get the beginning of the zombie outbreak and then what happens during the zombie outbreak. And depending on the movie, maybe you want to see the end of the zombie outbreak, how it's all resolved at the end. And I kind of felt that this movie works better as a side story to something like that. Like, if we're watching The Walking Dead, but if we were only watching episodes like 4, 5, and 6. Like, this has nothing to do with the rest of the series. This is a side story where no one quite knows what's going on, but this is how they're dealing with it.
It's like a slice of life kind of section of a bigger zombie apocalypse world.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can take that.
I would be fully on board for that, except for the fact that they also try to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, yeah, I don't think that it necessarily fully works. And like I said, I don't think the movie is good because of a lot of the choices in this movie. But I think that where the movie works best, I'm able to see it that way.
That's fair. What about you, Pierre? Did you have any issues with the way they tried to resolve it?
Yeah, I didn't realize she was the alpha zombie either. I thought they just, like...
I'm starting to think maybe she's not. If all three of us did. Maybe Dakota, maybe you're reading
one that watched this movie.
Like, now that I think about it, it seems like it was implied, because I remember a big point of confusion for me was, like, why is this all wrapping up right after she dies, right? Like, I thought that was weird. But then also, like, I don't know, they just skipped over a lot of stuff. Like, I wish there wasn't, like, a breakout and it was just her, because I thought once they started trying to, like, build up the apocalypse or whatever, it just started to lose a lot of focus, and I got really confused and my mind wandered to other things. When, like, I think the core of the movie, like, they established at the start, was that it's about a guy who misses his girlfriend or whatever, and by the end of the movie, it didn't really feel like that. Even though, like, I guess it kind of resolved in that way, it still felt like, I don't know, unresolved and unfocused, especially because, you know, I think the whole insertion of Anna Kendrick's character was just really jarring and, like, kind of weird to me. And also, like, the whole fake out with his parents dying and stuff was just, like, it was very shocking, but it didn't really have any emotional resonance, because, like, it just happened so quickly, and then it was, like, taken back, like, 10 minutes later. So yeah, it felt like they didn't have a script for the third act, and they just kind of wrote around it and hoped that it would kind of make sense. Like, it's the same thing with like John C. Reilly's character dies off screen, right? Which I thought was like really confusing because I think he had like the third biggest role in the movie, and he just disappears. And it's like John C. Reilly had like a scheduling thing, or they had to do reshoots, and they're just like, oh, let's just like do a throwaway line where it turns out she ate him or something like that, and go from there. So yeah, stuff like that just felt they didn't know what they were doing at the end.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the only reason why I was calling it the alpha zombie, because it literally was, as soon as she died, in the next scene, everything got better again, and the rest of the zombies seemingly disappeared. Now we could chalk it up to this tactical team managing to kill every single zombie that came back to life. But in reality, why did the power go out? Why is it back? All that sort of stuff. So that was just me kind of like putting details together, like, oh, she must have been the first zombie, so as soon as she died, everything got better, I guess. Like, I don't know. In this also world, it doesn't seem to follow the rules of regular zombie rules, which is if you get bitten, you turn into a zombie, unless your brain gets completely destroyed or something. I don't know. Because John C. Reilly gets eaten, but just stays dead. Molly Shannon loses a hand, but she's okay. Like, you would think that these people would also turn into zombies, which, sure, I have no problem if a movie wants to play with the tropes and conventions of, a subgenre of a movie like zombies. But, like, we don't get any sort of acknowledgement that they're doing it in a subversive way. It just sort of seems like, oh, no, these zombies can kill people, and that's it.
I also was wondering, I thought that that's kind of where the movie was going after he had... was it Dane's character has sex with Aubrey Plaza? I was like, maybe that's where it's going. Like he's gonna turn into. I didn't know, but I wonder now after you saying that, Dakota, it's like, would the movie have worked better if it was a more blatantly kind of satirical version of a zombie movie, like where they acknowledge that there are certain rules that they've seen in a movie or something like that, like or yes, whatever, and then they go from there. Like I've seen some, I can't think of the name of it now, but I've seen some like Korean movies and TV shows that do something similar to that. It's like there's one in particular I'm thinking of, and I really can't remember the name of it, but it's like they acknowledge what is in film, like what typical zombie Train to Busan kind of things happen, and being like, okay, that's how we're going to work it in real life kind of thing. Like that's how it's going to be. Yeah, and I wonder actually if this movie maybe would have worked a little bit better if it had leaned into being a satire versus just a funny zombie movie.
I 100% think it would have. Mm-hmm. But Pierre, you had mentioned Anna Kendrick, so I think we should kind of transition to that. The main reason, like I said off the top of the show, that you guys are here is this is part of your Kickin It With Kendrick series. And as I said, if it wasn't you guys coming on the show, we wouldn't even discuss Anna Kendrick, but I feel we actually need to. Her role, she shows up as a childhood friend of Zach's and basically is there as a plot device for Beth to be jealous at, and then later on at the end of the movie for Zach to move on with his life from. What did you guys think of Anna Kendrick's performance in this film?
So there wasn't a lot of it, which is always a shame, I think. But this is this is part of this is one of her collaborations with Aubrey Plaza, which there are a lot. I'm realizing. I think they're clearly very good friends, but also they've been in a lot of movies together, and I think in this movie, I think she's almost kind of misused because she's there and she's able to be this this sort of awkward character that I guess she's supposed to be the other girl to Dane De Haan, but she really isn't. She just sort of exists to give a little bit of extra tension to Dane De Haan's relationship with a zombie, which is already a relationship with a zombie, so does it really need more tension? I don't really know. Yeah, I think like she exists and she's fine. She just sort of like doesn't do very much. This is, I mean, Pierre said that like the whole third act of this movie seems like they didn't really know what they were doing, or like they didn't really know where to go with it. And I feel like Anna Kendrick is kind of, unfortunately, a casualty of that in this movie.
It kind of feels like she's like, to what you were saying, Jeff, about them being buddies. Like, it just feels like she kind of did this as a favor almost, because you literally could have gotten any actress to do this. You didn't need Anna Kendrick, like, especially if you consider where this is in her filmography. She's already done, like, this isn't one of her first roles where it's, you know, she's just kind of building up a portfolio. It's like she's done quite a bit at this point to be in this part. And so it is kind of surprising she would do such a tiny little role for that. Really, not that it's nothing to the movie, because there is a bit of a point to her character, but you know, at that stage in her career, she wouldn't have needed to do something like that. And my guess would have to be like, it's just a bit of a favor to either the director or to Aubrey Plaza. Sorry.
Well, very notably, this is post Pitch Perfect.
Yeah. I just wanted to look it up very quick. I was just like, maybe this was at the beginning, because the thing with Anna Kendrick that I'll like give her credit, her face does not change. She looks the exact same since she did in like the first movies to today. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint at what point in her career this is. But yeah, I found her really quite juvenile in this movie. Like, they made her very, very childish, like incredibly childish. In the brief period of time that we see her in, she's incredibly childish and quite flaky almost. But I guess that's kind of the point of her.
Mm-hmm.
This is the type of movie that, like, there's a lot of cameos in this, and ones that I think people probably wouldn't even realize as much. So, like, you've got Jim O'Hare, who's from Parks and Rec. He shows up as the mailman. Mm-hmm. Rob Delaney is a news anchor. Adam Paley is the diner, the guy that works in a diner. Gary Marshall shows up at the very end as the grandfather. Yeah. And it looks like there was some deleted scenes with Alia Shawkat as well. So if we look at this role as nothing more than a cameo compared to like the other ones, the only difference is she's in 2 scenes. I guess that's where she sort of fits in. But yeah, you look at Jeff Baena's career, he's married to Aubrey Plaza now, but like he's done, I think, 3 or 4 movies. All of his movies sort of seem similar, as in, let's bring my friends in for even small parts, for day roles.
I didn't know they were married. That kind of makes more sense. Don't know why it makes sense. I just didn't have any idea they were married. That's interesting.
What about you, Pierre? How does this fit in for Anna Kendrick for you?
Yeah, I thought it was terrible. I the role was just really kind of sick to me. Like the whole, because I thought the theme of it was like moving on, I guess, right? But then like it felt kind of a little weird to have him be into someone else. As like the way he moves on. I guess that's a common trope, but like it was weird, like at the end when he's saying goodbye to her, like at her grave, and then he literally goes to Anna Kendrick's car and is like, hey, you want to go out or something like that. That was just kind of like gross. And also like the whole flirting in the cafe was like, what was he like, I like your skin or something like that? Like that was kind of awkward. I think that was on purpose, but I don't know, little things like that. And like also how the parents were like trying, like did they specifically save her so that he could be with her? I don't know what was going on there, but that was also kind of weird because they were like, looked like they were kind of like shipping them hard. Anyways, it was just like kind of overall just a weird, awkward role. She was in like 6 movies that year too, so it was just kind of like you couldn't have just been in 5. Like, did you really need this one? Like, it wasn't like she was desperate for work or anything. So, yeah, definitely like a bottom tier Anna Kendrick role for sure.
Okay. And I guess the question that you guys always ask each other is, where does it stand for you in terms of Anna Kendrick's performance and her overall filmography as far as movies you like?
It might actually be the worst one for me. Like, wow. Role-wise. Movie-wise, there's definitely worse movies, but yeah, role-wise, like, it was just such an odd role. I don't know.
So, in terms of movies, like, completely irrespective of role, I put it pretty mid Like I liked this okay. I thought it was like, not great, but I didn't think it was horrible. In terms of her role in it, I would put this not at the bottom, but pretty near the bottom, I think. I just, more so than a lot of other movies. And I know I've said this before on our show, like, Anna Kendrick didn't need to be this role, and like she didn't need to be in this movie. This role could have been done by just about anybody, and like she doesn't bring that much to it. I enjoy watching her on screen, but like I don't think she did that much. I think I would probably put it in terms of where I liked her in this movie. I would probably put it, I guess pretty near the bottom. Not below her 1 year of high school movies, but like maybe just above that.
All right, sounds good. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have some fun with some games.
This is Classic Movies Live, the pre-recorded show where we talk about movies that just came out. I'm your host, Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Pierre. Pierre, what movie are we talking about today?
Jeff, what are you talking about? We're recording an ad.
Oh, is this an ad for Kickin It With Kendrick, the show where every week we bring on a different expert to talk about the filmography of Anna Kendrick?
No, this is an ad for Losing It Over Leo, the show where we chronologically go through Leonardo DiCaprio's career from childhood to his Oscars.
Are you entirely certain this isn't an ad for CML Classics, episodes of Classic Movies Live that we recorded 2 years ago?
Well, I guess it's an ad for all four at this point.
Well, you know what? That just works out, because you can find all four of those over on the Heatwave Radio channel on Spotify.
Nice.
All right, so we're back, and now we're going to play our favorite games, Create a Double Bill, and Would You Rather. So we're going to start with the double bill. Jeff, as our guest, let's start with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you let me go first, because I'm pretty sure I'm cheating, and I'm going to take a double bill away from all of you guys. I decided that a good double bill here would be... I wanted to do movies that heavily feature dismemberment, but less heavily feature Anna Kendrick. So I was going to double bill this with The Voices.
Oh, look at you.
I think both of these, for one thing, as we've already sort of mentioned several times this episode, they're two of Anna Kendrick's only they're Anna Kendrick's only, or at least biggest profile horror comedy movies. And I think they actually do work pretty well together. I did not watch these back to back. I watched them on subsequent days, but I think these do kind of work well because they do both have a romantic subplot, although with Life After Beth, the romantic subplot is kind of the biggest subplot, where with The Voices, I would say the romantic subplot is a little bit in the background. I think a lot of The Voices, and we'll talk about it, we talked about it a lot more on our show. With The Voices, the romantic elements are really more in service of the central theme, which is really examining Ryan Reynolds' character. But I think that I think both of those movies have a very strong male lead who's like really devoted to that romantic subplot. And then they have Anna Kendrick, obviously, and they're both sort of like vaguely horror comedies of differing degrees. So I think those work well together. That would be my personal double bill.
Listen to Classic Movies Live to hear more about The Voices.
Please do.
Pierre, what about you?
I'd pair this with a movie called Ingrid Goes West. It's from 2017. It stars Aubrey Plaza, so I guess that's why I'm choosing it. It just feels right. Like I feel like a lot of the tone is like very similar, but it's just like I think Ingrid Goes West just does it better. I don't know how to say it because I think they're technically like both aiming to be dark comedies. But I think I actually really liked Aubrey Plaza in this movie, in both movies. And I don't know, I feel like they work together, but obviously I think Ingrid Goes West would just be like, it'd be like the second one, because you want to watch the worst one first, and then like I feel like Ingrid Goes West might kind of perfect some of the things that in some ways this movie was going for. I already forgot the name of this movie. Life After Beth. Yeah, there you go. It's right there. But yeah,
it's that forgettable of a
I feel bad now. But yeah, it's like I feel like if this director maybe honed his skill more, he could make a movie like Ingrid Goes West, I guess.
Ingrid Goes West is a great film, and one that is genuinely unnerving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this movie could have been unnerving too, if you went in certain ways. But yeah, it's a great movie. You should check it out.
Rachel, what about you?
So I was going to do like a zombie movie like 28 Days or what was it? Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead. That's what I was saying before. But just actually as we were talking, it made me think of Pet Sematary, which was, what is it now? 2019, I think it came out in. I would go Pet Sematary, and it's based off of a Stephen King novel that talks about a graveyard where anything that you bury in it can come back to life. Instead of Life After Beth kind of hints at Haitian mythology. This one uses Pet Sematary is more focused on indigenous spirituality and the folk tales from that culture. So yeah, I think Pet Sematary would work nicely with this. It's not a comedy, obviously. The movie itself is okay. Like, I actually think it gets a worse rap than it probably deserves, but it's a good story, and I think it was done decently well. It's a different thing to Life After Beth. It's not, like I said, it's not a comedy. It's not lighthearted, but just kind of that similar idea of bringing things back to life. And this one actually does kind of explain what the deal is, unlike Life After Beth.
I think that's a really interesting pick. It's so funny. I thought the more obvious picks would be made, so I went out of my way to not make an obvious pick, but we clearly all had that same idea. Yeah, this was a tough choice only because I can name any number of horror or comedy films, even with the subgenre of zombie horror comedies. Instead, I'm going with one of my all-time favorite horror comedies in Mel Brooks' 1974 film, Young Frankenstein. I think it does a better job at deconstructing the genre and being actually funny.
That's a really good pick. I actually really, really like that pick. I'm upset I didn't think about that one. That's a really good choice.
Does that count as me being bougie, Rachel?
A little bit, because I don't think you've picked anything that's been in like the 90s forward, but it's fine. But no, that's actually a really, really, really good shout, though. I genuinely wish I had thought about that.
Well, thank you. It was either that or Zombieland.
Yeah, I think I'm actually really surprised. This weekend, I'll say the last one we did, which was, or was it Enemy? There was one that I definitely thought we were all going to have overlap on, and this one was another one that I was pretty confident everyone would choose like a handful of the same movie. So I'm really glad we didn't, though. Everyone chose something pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So the next question is a would you rather game. So Jeff, what would you rather question do you have for us?
Okay. So I'm realizing as I wrote out my would you rather questions, mine are kind of depressing. So I hope that that doesn't end up being too awful. But
as I said last week to Alex, it will not be the first time we've had a really dark and depressing would you rather question.
All right, perfect. So this is actually the lighter of the two that I prepared. For the less light one, you're going to have to go back. Listeners are going to have to go back to the voices. But this is more like upbeat and cheery of my two. So following a major event that led to the dissolution of a friendship or relationship, would you rather have that relationship end completely, like never talk to that person again, or have the other person completely forget that event and go on as if nothing happened?
Oh. Interesting.
Would I know that like I still have the memory that something bad had happened? They just don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. I like that question a lot because that really makes you think, because in my head I go, oh, obviously I would like to still remain friends with them. But if the disillusionment was the cause of something that this person did to really hurt me, would I want to have to constantly live with this reminder of that this person has the capability to do something so hurtful that in theory I would never want to see them again? Wow, that's a tough one, Jeff.
See, I went the other way, Dakota, and I was thinking, if I knew and they didn't know, you could be like super vindictive and just do terrible shit to them and not feel bad about it because, they were shitty to you.
That's because you're a
I know,
person.
it is. It really shows the different sides of you and I. I think I'd go for the former. I think I would go with, I don't want them to die. I would assume I don't want them to die. But yeah, I would rather just be kind of one and done with it. If it was that bad of a fallout, like if it was so bad that you're never going to speak to that person ever again in your life, then yeah, I would rather it just be kind of done and dusted versus them coming back and me being tempted to be a vindictive bitch to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually agree with you, Rachel, and I would probably be on the same page as that. What about you, Pierre?
Oh man, mine's pretty basic. Jeff's was really good. Would you rather? It's kind of a reference to Shauna that I did too, but like, would you rather? I don't know, like let your friend die, or if you had the equipment to properly contain them / feed them, would you rather have them as a zombie like pet, basically? I guess.
That's like Shaun of the Dead, kind of. Like at the end, he keeps they keep him kind of chained up. If my friend is not going to bite me or kill me, then yeah, I don't mind taking care of them. Assuming it's a good friend, not like, just some random person I know. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having like a pet zombie.
I would be the opposite. You ain't catching me slipping. I am not going to get accidentally bit. Sorry, best friend. You were going with the rest of the zombies into the hole in the ground.
If it's the alpha zombie, too, then you would want to make sure you probably want to end it because that would be, for the greater good kind of situation.
And like, I've never been that good with pets anyway. So as much as I, would love having a pet, I think that would be a lot of work. And I don't know that I would. I think it would be a lot. I think I would just like cut that off. Just say thank you, but no thanks.
Literally cut that off.
Pierre, what about you? How would you answer your own question?
I don't know. I'd feel bad because I feel like you get bored. So like, I need to get him like a zombie friend or something. But then that would imply that like, I'd have to kill someone else, and I'm not willing to join him in the zombie like zone. So, yeah, I think it'd be better to just like cut loose. Maybe like give them like maybe like give them a place in like the forest, like in a cabin somewhere. I think that could be nice, like where they can't eat anyone. I think that'd be cool. I don't know.
Send them to a farm upstate or something.
Yeah, like like they said, where they send those dogs or something instead of the dogs like at the farm like having fun in the fields and stuff. Like the zombies.
Just a paddock of zombies running around bumping into each other.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of like mildly enjoyable for them.
Sorry, Jeff, I just realized you didn't answer your own question either, actually.
Oh, for me, it's pretty easy. I think that, like, if something happened where I don't want to talk to someone again, as much as I like hate having that friendship completely die, I would want that to end. Like, I would not be comfortable if I knew something about someone and they forgot whatever that event was. I would not be comfortable continuing that friendship.
Fair enough.
Or relationship, whatever it is.
All right, my question is also basic, so don't worry, Pierre. It was, I was struggling a little bit with this, and I decided to go with kind of like a video game thing of, would you rather, like a choose your weapon kind of thing? So, would you rather, in the event of a zombie apocalypse, you got one weapon to use. You can go for an axe, you can go for a chainsaw, or would you rather a gun? the most effective gun. I don't know guns very well, so like whichever gun is the best in the zombie apocalypse.
I feel like you're gonna die either way, so like a chainsaw is actually like a fun way to like kind of go out. You know, I played, what was it, Left 4 Dead 2? The chainsaw is definitely the most fun weapon, as long as you have gas. So I don't know if, do I get unlimited gas?
Sure, why not?
Okay, cool. Yeah, chainsaw for sure.
Dakota?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, you know, with the chainsaw, you can run out of gas. With a gun, you can run out of bullets. And with an axe, you need to use your own physical strength in order to actually do any damage. I would probably still say gun, just because wielding an axe is exhausting. Has anyone ever chopped wood? It is really hard work. And with a chainsaw, you're going to get blood and guts all up in your face. That, like, unless you're wearing like one of those like full COVID suits with a mask and then a face shield, you're getting brains in your mouth when you do that. So no thank you to that. So I'm going to go with gun, so I can at least have a bit of distance between me and my target.
I thought you'd pick gun. Jeff, what about you?
Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means.
But I'm glad I get to go last on this one, because initially, like, I was gonna say chainsaw, basically for the same reason as Pierre. I think that would be the most fun, but I have really weak arms, so I don't know if that would actually be. It would be a lot to carry around, and like, I'm not in good enough shape to have a lot of fun with the chainsaw. I think that, like, considering all three of these things, I would be new skills I'd have to learn. I'd rather learn how to use a shotgun. So I think that I would probably go gun, because it's in the case of a zombie apocalypse, it seems like it would be just as fun. I think that the skill of learning to use a shotgun would be at least as useful as learning to use a chainsaw. And, you know, as Dakota said, you don't get blood and guts all over you. You can kind of keep a distance. You don't have to get right up in a zombie's face and risk whatever that ends up meaning. So I would go probably gun as well.
I'm with Pierre on Team Chainsaw. I think it'd be the most fun. And I did base it off a video game as well. I was thinking like Resident Evil, where it's the most fun. Like, that's the best weapon to use because it's just fun. And, you know, you build up your strength, build up your skills in it. In a zombie apocalypse, I feel like if you were really unfit, you probably you'd be done pretty early anyways. So assuming that you're still in it and you're still in the game, I feel like a chainsaw would be the, maybe not the best weapon, maybe the most efficient weapon, but it would be the best way to go out.
My question actually also is a little bit inspired by Shaun of the Dead, like Pierre's. So assuming you have a basically zombie loved one, would you rather keep your zombie loved one chained up to go on hikes or chained up to go play video games like in Shaun of the Dead?
When you say go on hikes,
I mean like in Life After Beth,
okay.
Go on a hike.
I'm just going to stick with video games because it's just sedentary and, you know, it's, yeah, you just sit there, you play video games. You can have a weapon nearby as well, like really close to you if they ever get out of hand. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with play video games.
I think I'd say video games. No, I think I'd say hikes. I feel like video games, like, it's implied you're in like a room, and if something bad happens, you don't really have much like space to maneuver, I guess. Especially if you're like trying to finish the game, then like it'd be really awkward if you had to like didn't press save or whatever. So I think hiking would be better, but I also hate hiking. So, but for the sake of my safety, I'd say hiking.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to say video games, but also for the sake of my safety. I feel like there's a lot that can go wrong hiking because, like, you know, you have someone chained up to do one of these two things, right? But hiking by design, you're going to have to unchain them. So if this is a zombie that can like run around, you know, you can only have them restrained so much during a hike. And I just feel like there's way too much that can go wrong during a hike. So if I had to pick one of the two, I would definitely go video games. Yes, a lot can go wrong, but like we're dealing with a situation with zombies. A lot can go wrong by default. I think a hike, there's a lot more that can go wrong, at least that I would worry about.
Fair enough.
What about you, Dakota?
Maybe this is the Vancouver in me talking, but I would probably choose hikes. Just because I feel like that's a bit of a better activity to do. Whereas with the video game, I can already beat up on my brothers pretty easily while playing video games. So like, I don't need to beat a dead person at video games.
But they're not dead. They're like a living dead.
The undead. Sorry.
Slightly different. You moved to Vancouver for like not even a year, and now you're just all Mr. Hikey McHikerson over there.
Yeah, and Jeff has apparently lost all of his Vancouver-ness.
Yeah, I'm a real Toronto guy now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Jeff and Pierre, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Guys.
Where can people follow you and find your work?
So we're on Spotify, where we have Classic Movies Live. That's everything is under the Classic Movies Live banner on Spotify. But we've got Losing It Over Leo, where we talk about Leonardo DiCaprio movies. We got Kickin It With Kendrick, where we talk about Anna Kendrick movies. We've got CML Classics, where I'm working on uploading all of our old episodes to Spotify. And then, of course, we have Classic Movies Live, the original, where we talk about movies that just came out. And I believe that if you're hearing this, if people are hearing this right as it comes out, our next episode of Classic Movies Live should be either Licorice Pizza or Coda. We're trying to go through all of our... we're trying to go through anything that's likely to be a Best Picture nominee right now. And I think we've been doing pretty good. We'll see how things shake out once the Best Picture nominees are actually announced for the Oscars.
Well, excellent. And people for the last 4 episodes, including this one, have also been hearing an ad for the Classic Movies Live. So hopefully they've already been checking your work out and listening along to all this great stuff that you produce. Rachel, where can listeners find more of your work too?
You can go to rachelkh.com. All my socials are _RachelKH. I just finished Sundance, so there's a lot of Sundance stuff around, a lot of reviews, and an interview that I still need to get up, but it will be up by the time that this is out there. But yeah, it was just a whole lot of Sundance fun the last week.
Awesome. For our last A24 retrospective, we had some listener feedback. We had Brody Cottenham suggest Dead Ringers, while Callum McNabb of Scared Traducing suggested 2 Pedro Almodovar films and Bad Education, In the Skin I Live In, to go with Enemy. Once again, Jeff and Pierre, thank you so much for coming on, and make sure everyone checks out our appearance on Classic Movies Live to hear us talking about The Voices coming out in a few days from now. You can follow this show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ContraZoomPod. If you have seen the film distributed by A24, let us know your thoughts. Send an email to ContraZoomPod@gmail.com. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music, and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there too. Thanks for checking us out.